The first sound that pierced the ash-soaked dawn over Calixis 4 wasn't an alien screech or the rumble of artillery, it was a human voice, crackling over a long-dead transmitter. To anyone still breathing, "My name is Captain Yolan Reese. We are not dead. We are not done." That voice shattered the silence that had hung like a funeral shroud over the broken colony. Survivors blinked from hiding holes, under rubble, behind plasma-scorched metal. A child clutched her mother's jacket, eyes wide. As the message repeated again, Calixis 4 had been declared lost. Humanity's retreat from the fringe colonies was swift and silent, leaving behind those too slow, too wounded, too forgotten, the etherical-blooded, insectile warlords from the Helians swarm-swept across the planet like fire. In 7 days, they razed the cities and silenced every known frequency, and yet, now, here was a voice. Yolan Reese had died, or so they believed, until now. Lieutenant Mara Voss, once second in command to Reese, heard the transmission while scavenging power cells from a ruined comms relay. The voice slammed into her chest like a memory she'd buried in the rubble. His voice steady, fierce, defiant. She rerouted her handheld, boosted the signal. "Repeat, confirm, Reese. This is Voss. Where the hell are you?" Static hissed. "Then, I'm underground. District 6. Old metro tunnels. Survivors here. Injured, children. We're alive." Alive. The word itself felt alien. Mara clenched her jaw. She had buried Reese herself, or thought she had. She remembered pulling his dog tags from the crater, his blood on her hands. But now, "Copy that," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I'm coming to get you." Mara didn't wait. No orders, no backup. She had no command anymore, just remnants. Scattered fighters, medics, engineers, survivors. Her path to the metro tunnels cut through open kill zones, burnt-out streets littered with the bones of buildings and soldiers. Drones still patrolled, their eyes glowing red through the dust. Storm, she moved like a shadow, every step fueled by memory. Reese wasn't just her suo, he was her gravity. She had fought beside him, bled for him, and when she thought he'd died, a part of her broke hand, she hadn't let it mend. But now he was alive, or something pretending to be. The entrance to District 6 metro tunnels was half buried under collapsed skybridge wreckage. Mara pried open the grate, her palms bleeding, breath shallow. The air below reeked of rot, plasma residue, and desperation. She dropped down, landing hard, and then she heard it, echoing, familiar. Reese's voice again, not through comms but ahead, in the dark. "Hold on, we're not letting anyone die today." Her chest tightened. That voice real, alive. She turned a corner and froze. There he was, Jalen, Reese, older, scarred, thinner than she remembered, but unmistakably him. He crouched beside a wounded child, adjusting a jury-rigged respirator made from scavenged tech, a medical tape. His face lit by a low-power lamp. "Jalen, ... She choked. He turned, and when their eyes met, it was like time collapsed inward. "Mara." He stood slowly. No words, just an exhale of disbelief. Then he stepped forward and gripped her shoulder with trembling fingers. "I knew you'd still be out there. I thought you were dead," she whispered. "I almost was. They left me for dead, but the locals, some of them, hid me, kept me breathing." Behind him, more survivors emerged, 20, maybe 30. Children, elderly, wounded, the forgotten. How long have you been down here? She asked. 71 days. She blinked. How did you survive? Rhys gave a tired, almost defiant smile. Because someone had to light the morning. And just like that, the mission changed. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about proving to the galaxy that humanity didn't break. Not when abandoned, not when hunted, not even in the dark. Mara looked at him, then at the survivors. We'll get you out, she said. But we'll need more than hope. We'll need a war. And Rhys, ever the soldier, replied, Then let's give them one. The tunnels weren't just sheltered, they were a graveyard of memories. Mara followed Rhys deeper underground, through collapsed corridors and makeshift barricades made from scrap metal and old furniture. Every few meters, hand-drawn symbols and arrows marked the path, part survival guide, part memorial. Did you draw these? She asked, fingers grazing a wall etched with a child's drawing of stars. Rhys nodded. People need something to follow, even if it's just chalk. There was weight in his voice now. Not the kind of exhaustion that comes from hunger or war, but the kind that comes from seeing too much and surviving it anyway. You were always the map maker, Mara whispered, and you were the one who made people believe the map mattered. They entered the main chamber, the heart of the resistance Rhys had built in the dark. Solar scraps and reflective panels provided a trickle of power. A hologram buzzed weakly to life, showing a rough map of coax's -4 red zones flickered across the surface. All enemy territory, Rhys said. Every green dot's a survivor pocket. If we're going to make a move, we need to unite them, fast. Mara studied the map. You've been tracking survivors for weeks. Before I reactivated the broadcast beacon, she turned sharply. You knew I'd hear it. I hoped. If anyone was still out there, it was you. Their eyes locked again, not in anger, not in grief, but in recognition of who they'd been on, who they still had to become that night. Rhys addressed the gathered survivors. He stood beneath the broken arch of an old subway terminal, backlit by firelight, voice steady and slow. Mara watched from the edge, silent, listening not as a soldier, but as someone trying not to fall apart. They thought they buried us, burned our cities, took our names, but we're still here. They built their empire on silence. Let's answer with thunder. The children looked at him like he was a myth returned. The elders wept without sound. Even the wounded stirred, shifting their bandages, as if the pain didn't anchor them anymore. Mara had seen battlefield speeches, command broadcasts, even propaganda vids, but none of them bled like this one. It wasn't strategy, it was resurrection. After the speech, she found him alone beside the old ventilation shaft, staring at a cracked photo in his hand. It was her and him, taken the day before the invasion. We weren't ready, he said. No one was, she replied, sitting beside him. But that didn't stop you from trying. Rhys sighed. There's something I haven't told the others. Something bigger than just survival. Mara tensed. Go on. They're building something. In orbit. I've intercepted encrypted drops data packets, blueprints. The ethery plan to turn Calyxis into a harvest point. Not just for resources, for us. There. Learning from our DNA. Repurposing it. Mara's blood ran cold. They want to evolve, he said, voice low. And they're using us to do it. That was the twist Mara hadn't expected. Not just war, not just genocide, but assimilation. Then we burn it down, she said coldly. We take the data, hijack their command hub, and detonate it from orbit. You always think bigger than the sky, Reese said with a dry smile. Only because you taught me how. They stood in the flickering glow of firelight, survivors sleeping in the background, unaware of what tomorrow would demand. But in that moment, Mara felt something she hadn't felt since before the war. Purpose. She looked up at the ceiling beyond it. Stars still burned, and somewhere among them, the Aetheri believed this world was theirs. But they hadn't heard the voice that lit the morning yet. At 0400 hours, Mara stood on the crumbling edge of Substation Theta, a decayed power outpost on the surface once used to refuel orbital skiffs. Now it served a new purpose launch point for a rebellion. Beneath her, in the metro tunnels, the survivors prepared to move. Makeshift armor, repaired rifles, drones reprogrammed with hacked Aetheri tech. Nothing was new. Everything was stolen, repurposed, sharpened with rage. Reese stood beside her, binoculars scanning the horizon. Aetheri patrols will shift west in 7 minutes, he said, calmly. We move then. Hit the comms tower, jam their grid, and get the intel out. And if they see us... Reese looked at her. Then we show them what it means to fight in the dark and still believe in morning. The plan was insanity. Strike 3 key Aetheri relays across the ruins of New Sidonia. Pull data, extract encryption logs, send it skyward via the last surviving orbital tether, then detonate the base to sever the Aetheri's planetary grip. A suicide mission dressed in hope. Mara led the first team, Reese the second. They moved like shadows across glass-fast, silent, lethal. Drones buzzed above, their sensors fooled by heatsig, disruptors, and noise-cancelling foam. Old tech, Earth. Tech. Human tech at Relay Station 9. Mara's team breached the exterior wall using an old mining laser. She ducked inside, pulse rifle up. The scent of Aetheri pheromone trails hit her like acid. They were close inside. The station pulsed with alien biotech walls that breathed, consoles that shimmered like living flesh. At the center, a command node pulsed rhythmically, veins of data twitching in sync. Mara approached and plugged in the cracked drive Reese had built from spare drone parts. The screen flickered. Decrypting core node. Progress, 24%. Then, the shriek came. High-pitched, inhuman. Aetheri guards burst from the side corridors, their chitin armor hissing as they lunged. Hold them off. She screamed. Juno, the Medicton marksman, opened fire with plasma bolts. The room erupted into chaos gunfire, acid, blood, screams. Mara stood her ground, shielding the drive. 30%, for 5%, 6-7%, Time folded in on itself. One Aetheri charged her. She fired missed. It tackled her to the ground, claws sinking into her shoulder, and then a flash. A grenade rolled in. Boom. When she came to, her ears were ringing and her visor was cracked. But the drive was in her hand, and the node was silent. Download complete. 2 sectors away, Reese's team had it worse. The Aetheri had adapted. They spoke now crudely, mimicking human syllables. No escape, they hissed, cornering Reese and his group at the edge of the eastern data tower. But Reese didn't run. He triggered the core overload, not to kill them, but to blind the relay, fry its sensors. The resulting burst of light and EMP took out half the tower and lit the horizon for miles. A single beam of flame, rising skyward like a torch dot. Mara saw it from her outpost and smiled, blood dripping from her lip. Still painting skies, Yolan. The survivors regrouped that night at the old water plant, their makeshift command hub. Wounded were patched. Drives were linked. Reese stood over the table, watching as the data decrypted on a stolen ethery console. Lines of alien code translated into something horrifying. Mara stared. "They're not just using our DNA," she murmured. "They're mimicking our minds, copying speech, emotion, memory. They want to become us," Reese whispered. "Not just conquer us, replace us," double quotes. Silence, then he looked up. "We can't just warn the colonies. We have to stop the upload, too." "Orbit?" Mara asked. "The tether?" He nodded. "One final mission." She leaned close. "You know this means losing people." "I know," he said softly. "But if we don't do it, there won't be anyone left worth saving." That night, Mara stood on the rooftop of the plant, looking at the stars, so many gone. So many still watching, and in that silent, wind-torn moment, she heard the echo of his speech again. They built their empire on silence. Let's answer with thunder. They were the thunder now, and the sky wasn't ready. The last orbital, tether codenamed Skyhook, pierced the sky like a silver needle buried in the mountains northeast of the ruins. It once ferried cargo and civilians between Calix's 4 and its now destroyed defense station. Now the Ethri had co-opted it at dawn. The resistance moved. They called it Operation Ember Fall. The goal: breach the Skyhook base, override the uplink, and broadcast the decoded data to the surviving colonies' proof of what the Ethri were planning, and then destroy it, not with guns. With a human-made nuclear core Mara had risked her life to recover. As the convoy approached, Reese sat in the command crawler, reviewing troop movements on the holomap. He didn't flinch when Mara stepped inside, helmet in hand, eyes stormy. "You all right?" he asked. "No," she said. "And that's how I know I'm ready." He almost smiled. She dropped into the seat across from him. "The child, one you saved in the tunnel, Ziva. She gave me this." She opened her hand, a tiny scrap of cloth, a drawing, a stick figure with a red sun over its head. "That's you," she said. To her, you lit the sky. Reese stared at the drawing like it hurt to look at. "I'm no sun." "Doesn't matter," she said. "You gave them warmth anyway." They arrived at Skyhook's outer defenses by mid-morning. What they found wasn't steel and guns. It was silence. No guards, no patrols, just open gates and humming machinery. Trap. Mara knew it first. Too late, the crawler exploded in a burst of bioplasma, screams, fire, metal. The Ethri were waiting. Camouflaged in their cloaking fields, they surged from the cliffs and shadows, hundreds of them. More than ever seen in one place on Calix's 4, their leader. A tall, sleek alpha with mirrored kitten and humanoid posture stepped into view, and it spoke in English. "The voice that gave you hope belongs to us now." The survivors scattered. Chaos ignited. Mara dragged Reese behind a barricade, blood running from a gash above his brow. "They knew," she gasped. "They heard the transmissions. They let us build this hope so they could snuff it out." Reese didn't reply. He looked hollow. "Yolan talked to me. And then he said it. I told them." Silence fell between the gunfire and the screams. Mara froze. "What?" Reese looked up at her, eyes haunted. "They didn't find me by accident, Mara. I made a deal, weeks ago, when I thought everyone was gone. When I thought it was just me and 30 people dying slowly in the tunnels. You. Her voice cracked. You gave them access. I didn't know what they were doing. I thought just supplies, passage, a ceasefire. I thought I could protect them. You gave them the voices, she whispered. You gave them our minds. He couldn't meet her eyes. I tried to fix it, he said. I turned, I fought. Back, that's why I sent the message. A pause, to warn you, to give you time to do what I couldn't. Ethery screams echoed through the canyon. Mara stood, shaking, then grabbed him by the collar and yanked him to his feet. You don't get to die in guilt, she spat. You die in purpose. She handed him the detonator. The nuclear core had been wired. All it needed was a push. End this, she said. Reese looked at her, had the fury and heartbreak in her face, and for the first time, he didn't speak. Like a soldier or a symbol. Just a man. I'm sorry, he said. Then make it mean something. They split. Mara led the final push to the core room, dragging wounded fighters and firing into the ethery swarm. She moved like a blade, all rage and precision. No more speeches, no more mercy. Reese climbed to the skyhook platform, dragging his body through fire, blood, and memory. The Alpha Ethery followed him, hissing ancient threats in new tongues. At the top, Reese activated the tether beacon. A signal surged across the star's roar, corrupted, screaming with truth. And then he pressed the detonator, from the base of the mountains. Mara looked up, and the sky exploded. A burst of light so bright it painted the dawn in gold and fire. The skyhook burned in mid-air, collapsing in on itself, like a dying star. And in that light she swore she could still hear his voice. We are not done. The explosion that tore through the skyhook was seen across half the planet. A wave of golden fire lit the ruins, split the clouds, and painted the shattered earth in something that resembled hope. The ethery screamed in retreat, sensors fried. Command structure gutted. Comms dead. But it wasn't just the destruction of a tower. It was the death of a message they thought they could control, and the beginning of a new one. 3 days later, Mara Voss stood in the same metro chamber where Yalan Reese had once spoken by firelight. Now she stood where he had died, his voice still echoing through the resistance comms, now replayed like a beacon, a memory loop etched into every survivor's transmitter. To anyone still breathing, we are not dead. We are not done. The survivors called it the morning speech. Children repeated it like prayer. Fighters whispered it before raids. Colonies that had once ignored Calix's 4 were now tuning in, hearing the truth of what had happened, and what still could. Mara had taken up his Tismara, not to replace him, to carry him. She sat in the corner of the ruined tunnel, staring at the scorched dog tags in her palm reeses, burned from the explosion but still intact. Her hand trembled, but her eyes didn't. Juno sat beside her, his arm bandaged, eyes red. They say transmissions reached the Terra rings, even the outer Mars bastions. Everyone's talking about Calixus. Mara nodded. They heard the light. Some of them are sending help. A pause. And what do we do? She stood slowly, looked at the children huddled near the fire, the wounded being tended by medics, the engineers repairing comms with hope in their hands. We rebuild, she said. We make this planet unignorable. That night, she climbed. The remains of the old central tower half collapsed, but still standing just high enough to touch the stars. She activated the beacon. Her voice, once a whisper beside Reese's, now rang out across the system. This is Lieutenant Mara Voss of Calixis 4. To every outpost still watching, to every colony still doubting, we are not the lost, we are the light. They tried to burn our voices, and we became fire. They tried to silence our dead, and we became echoes. We are not done. We are the ones who stayed. She paused, and her voice broke just slightly. His name was Yalon Reese. He believed we could still be more than survivors, that we could shine. And by God, he was right. In orbit, satellites realigned to listen. On Earth, holochannels lit up with Calix's signals, and on 1,000 backwater worlds where humans lived in fear. The morning speech echoed like thunder through static, not just words, not just resistance, but the reminder of what it meant to be human in a galaxy that had tried to erase them. The girl, Eva, ran up the ruined tower just after the transmission ended. In her hand, another drawing, a red sun. But now, 2 stick figures stood beneath it holding hands. Mara knelt, tears finally tracing the dust on her face. "Is that him?" she asked softly. The girl nodded, and me. The child grinned. "You lit the sky, too." That night, the survivors of Calixis 4 didn't whisper in fear. They sang ancient earth songs, rebel anthems, folk tunes, broken hymns to stars, and above them, the sky clear for the first time in years began to brighten with 1,000 silent watching suns, and in that golden silence, one truth rose higher than all others. They had not been forgotten, because someone had spoken, because someone had lit the morning.